Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand, and we're joined this week by Zach Simke. How are you going, Zach?
I'm good. How are you, Matthew?
Yep, pretty good. And we're also back again with Mary and Ilka again. Great to see you both. How are you, Mary?
Very well.
And Ilka, I think you might have brought us or been the instigator of this week's interview.
Yeah, just another Philadelphia connection.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that, but before we do, we've got a few people to thank, Zach, for bringing us the Passive House podcast and everything on the accelerator.
We do. A big thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. And thank you, too, to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwell North America, and Zola Windows. Thanks, too, to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, and Source 2050.
Awesome. All right. Well, I found this interview pretty inspiring. Our guest, or your guest, because pretty busy woman, Ramune. She is the founder of the amazing platform Spec Matters, which I'm going to talk about, but she's also an associate and an architect at 15, which is a design firm. So let's get straight into it, and we'll catch up after this interview.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast. Ilka and I are here today with Ramune Bartuskaite. She is an architect and CEO of Spec Matters. Can you tell us about your background?
Thank you so much, Mary and Ilka, for having me on the podcast. Yes, I'm a practicing architect here in Philadelphia. I'm originally from Lithuania. I moved to America in 2000 to Cleveland, Ohio. So I grew up mostly in Ohio. I went to undergrad at Miami University, and it was actually grad school that brought me to Philadelphia. And I also got the privilege of studying in Copenhagen and London during my studies at the Architectural Association. And I'm very lucky that my life has brought me to Philly right now.
Awesome. First of all, you have a very, very impressive bio. And I think what stood out to us was really the focus on healthy materials. Can you tell us what sparked your interest in healthy materials and kind of how you learned about them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I actually didn't mention that I went to Penn for grad school. So I had, 7 years of architectural school. And it was really only when I was studying for my licensing exams that I read a small paragraph that there are a lot of toxic chemicals that are put into building materials. And I was just shocked that after 7 years of school, including a degree in a really great institution at Penn, that it was never mentioned. At the same time, I was also managing a library at the current firm that I was working at. I loved research. I was the go-to person when someone had a product or something that needed a solution, and I loved doing the research to find the right product and material to address that. So I already had that interest. And I think at the same time is when the pandemic happened. And I really felt that was the first time people really thought about how their indoor environments impacted their health and well-being. And then on top of that, I actually lost my mom to cancer around the same time too. And so feeling helpless about that situation, and then knowing about the rising cancer rates in our country, I really felt like the building industry had a role to play in that problem. And that no one really was talking about it. So I started asking a lot of questions, and I realized that there's actually a big knowledge gap that exists between the building industry and then all the researchers and health professionals that know how grave the problem is, that are raising red flags about the toxicity of materials, but that information wasn't quite getting to the building designers who were actually selecting the materials themselves.
Yeah, that's really amazing that you didn't hear anything about it at all until your last exam.
Exactly. And I did have, some sustainability classes, but really nothing that I remember that talked about the toxicity of materials.
And so you did go on and go through a program at Parsons that focused on healthier materials. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So when I realized all of this, I did everything that I could to soak up all the knowledge that I could found. So I did a lot of my own research, but then I found the certification program at Parsons. It's put on by their Healthy Materials Lab. And it was a very accessible certification program, very affordable. It was a 4-part self-paced course over the course of a semester. It talked about human health and materials, building products, healthier material design and specs, and then how to execute healthier projects. And I think they did a really good job of pointing out the issues and then where the industry is right now. And that's when I realized that the gap exists. And it's not just me who thinks so. There's a lot of different people who also see this as a problem. And they really did a good job of clearly defining like how things are in the industry, how we cannot just rely on government regulation in America, at least, and that we as design professionals have the agency to make better decisions in order to help create healthier environments. And I also really think that course was really accessible to everyone, like who are students or emerging professionals, all the way to people who have been practicing for many decades. All of that information was very relevant, and I think everyone should take that course.
Their library is pretty accessible as well, right? They have a lot of information that everyone can benefit from.
Exactly, yes. And that's one of the tools that we feature on Spec Matters. I often go to use that as an example of a really great resource because they categorize materials by like those that have been used in affordable housing. So it's healthier, but also more affordable. Carbon information is also specified in those materials. And there you can filter the directory by bio-based and all sorts of different filters. So definitely easy to use, and I always recommend it.
And do they classify for certifications as well, like declare labels and red list free?
And I don't believe that database does, but there are other databases that you can filter by certification. Ecomedes, I think, is the top one right now that I often go to.
And you mentioned Spec Matters. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what you do there?
Yes, absolutely. So our mission is to empower the building industry to write healthier specifications and select healthier materials. And we really help architects and designers navigate the world of healthier materials. So we have a newsletter that we put out every 2 weeks that either focuses on healthy building news and find like latest findings in the industry, or tools, webinars, and just information that really digests it like into very small digestible bits so that you know how to apply it to your projects on a daily basis. And so outside of our biweekly newsletters, we have our website that houses a bunch of resources and databases like the Parsons Materials Library, Ecomedes. It also breaks down when to use it and how to use those resources. And then the thing that I'm most proud of is that we also have a team of volunteers that are mostly young professionals who actually help contribute to our content. So in a way, we're also like a training platform. We take on building professionals who may not have much knowledge in healthier materials and healthier environments. And so through that research, we train them and we coach them to then soak up more knowledge, help them empower themselves, and then also become healthy building advocates as they grow in their careers and then make those material decisions in the projects later on. So it's like a training platform, an advocacy platform, and also like a community. Everyone who has been part of our team has stayed in touch. We often share resources and rely on each other for help when we're struggling with projects. So it's been an exciting thing to be a part of, and I'm grateful to have such an amazing team and a lot of advisors who have helped us get to where we are today too.
That's amazing. And did we mention that you are the CEO and founder of Spec Matters? Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you found the company?
Yeah. So I think that happened around 2021. So I was towards the end of my architecture licensing when all of those things when pandemic hit, when I realized this was an issue. I first started by again like educating myself because I thought it was important for me as a licensed architect. And then I started basically sharing all the knowledge that I gained via newsletters at the firm that I was working internally and kind of tested it. Like, is this information that's helpful? And I got just like amazing feedback from everyone at the firm, from anyone who just started working to people who have been practicing for a long time, that it was information they had never heard of and they wanted more of it. And so I realized that I really needed to make this a public tool because a lot of people, I think, wanted to contribute to the healthy building movement, wanted to do better, wanted to create healthier environments, but just didn't know where to start or how they can make a difference. And I think that is exactly why I created Spec Matters. I really wanted people to have small bits of action and steps that they could take every day to slowly kind of bite away at the issue and contribute in their own way to the healthier building movement.
Yeah, it's such a great approach. Do you work with clients directly as well? Do like architecture firms come to you asking for consultation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So no, and I've intentionally haven't gone into consulting. I think I definitely could if I wanted to turn this more into a consulting practice. But I love my full-time job right now too. So and I can speak more about that. But I think for me, the most rewarding piece is just training the next generation. And so we do a lot of presentations and coaching, and that's kind of where I've kept it at right now.
Can you tell us some more about your full-time job? That's with the firm 15, is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Yes. So we're based in Philadelphia. We're women and minority owned. 4 amazing female founders came together 7 years ago now because they saw issues in the industry and they really believed that they could do things differently. And so we are really community focused. Health and wellness has always been part of our mission. And they were a really collaborative practice. We have a whole group of now experts outside of the industry that we pull into projects because the issues that we're solving today are just much more complex and require multiple different perspectives to really come up with holistic solutions. So yeah, we're very unique, especially in Philadelphia, and it's a really exciting place to be. And so I joined about 3 years ago as an architect, became an associate now, and I have helped inform our materials. We have 2 very talented interior designers, and I've worked with them to kind of vet the materials that we have in our library and what we propose to clients. And build our knowledge base so that we can better inform our clients of the decisions or the impacts that their decisions are making in projects and how we can together ensure that what we're building, what we're designing better serves the people who actually use these buildings. Yeah.
As a practicing architect or architecture office who want to be better, basically use better materials, more healthy materials, like what would be your first recommendations? Like, how do you go about it?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have your own standards of like what materials you will absolutely not recommend to clients. Like what is the absolute minimum that like of quality that you would want to put in your buildings, and have everyone on board so that no matter what project managers on the project, they all believe and they will all kind of maintain those standards as they suggest materials to clients. And in order to do that, I think you should definitely rely on the databases that we also have on Spec Matters, our platform, like the Parsons Healthy Materials Lab, Ecomedes. Red List free is something we always strive for, as many Red List free materials as possible. And then if there are barriers to that, I really recommend at least that materials have transparency documentation so that we're all striving or contributing to the demand of healthier products. I really believe it starts with transparency. If we don't know what's in the products, we can't even compare and pick a healthier option. So I think that's kind of a starting point. Like at least they must have transparency documentation. So building out your library so that you have options that you can easily pull from, I think is really important for firms to have as a starting point.
Could you give an example of a material that you would point clients to as, a somewhat easy substitution for them? And by easy, I mean, easy to accept?
Yeah. So actually, I think a lot of carpet manufacturers have come a long way in terms of providing red list free options. And so I think Interface is a manufacturer that has a lot of options that are both aesthetically pleasing. So the client's on board, they're also durable, but also don't have those toxic chemicals. So I think carpets is probably one that would probably be the easiest to recommend. Linoleum, tile, there's not many options out there. Most linoleum comes in sheets, which I think a lot of clients kind of hesitate as far as maintenance go and replacement goes. So Forbo is one manufacturer that does have linoleum tile, and we try and specify that when we can in our projects. We try and avoid wall covering as much as possible because there are not great durable wall covering solutions. So really, if a client really wants wall covering, like just asking the question, like why is that? Do you actually need it? Are there other options or corner guards you can provide in order to provide that durability to try and avoid that and keep PVC from our landfills?
So do you also look at building materials, for example, wall assemblies or roof assemblies that might be made out of natural materials as well?
Yeah, we do have some resources on specifically the roofing materials like membranes. Those are the two, I think, categories that probably have the more options in terms of like health and sustainability. There's not a lot of great non-toxic options that have been applied on a mass scale. Like I know there's a lot of new innovative materials, but I've seen it be a challenge to really convince like commercial clients to like really go for those new innovative options right now. Cost is a barrier. I guess there's not as much data on the durability of it as well. So I think there's a lot of promise there, a lot of research and a lot of new things that I think are being applied on a residential scale, which is very promising. But most of my work is usually it's on the commercial scale, and I just haven't seen people make that leap yet, unfortunately.
Do you ever test indoor air quality? Because that kind of goes hand in hand with toxicity.
Yeah, we do recommend, because that is how you know if your environment actually is toxic or not. As far as like clients at 15, I think one great example was a school for learning differences, and they really wanted to educate their kids about, what does their building do for them? And we did discuss having like a live monitoring system where people could see like what is actually happening with the air quality. Like, so that is something we push for. We would love every building to have that real live data so people could actually see what's happening. But again, like cost is often a hurdle, or even like hiring people to do that testing. I think it takes a lot to convince clients to invest in that.
Or actually having that data available, right? It comes back to liability a lot of times. So some institutions don't even want their air quality to be tested.
Yeah, exactly. It's scary actually, but it's important for people to at least keep asking those questions, demand them, until people ask, no one's going to go out of their way to provide it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand you also are actively involved in some local organizations such as Green Building United, which I think some of our listeners are familiar with, and also the Women's Leadership Initiative, and also the Philadelphia Urban Land Institute. How is your involvement there helping you in your working life, in your professional life?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Women's Leadership Initiative is actually part of the Urban Land Institute. And Green Building United, I volunteered for many times. They host symposiums every year where they put on a lot of great educative sessions. So it's definitely a really great organization, especially when it comes to like knowledge sharing and building a community of supportive professionals who care about the same things and really empower each other to like be advocates for health and sustainability. But I think my involvement, I've had the chance to be in leadership positions at ULI and really craft the programming that comes out of that organization, at least some of the councils. And I am really proud of a few of those programs that I've helped initiate there that really address health and equity on a larger scale. And I've always been interested, like as an architect, like my sphere of influence, I really believe is not just on one building at a time. Like it's a network, it's a fabric that composes our cities. And we really need to think on the big scale if we want to really implement change, long-term change. So one of the programs that I was able to create merged public health professionals with building industry, real estate professionals. And for the first time, at least in the Philadelphia chapter, they really came together to ask the big question, like, what if we actually work together to create and design environments instead of like public health professionals are usually the ones who are dealing with the aftermath of poorly designed environments in cities. So just bringing those people together, looking for ways they can collaborate and support each other. I was really happy to see that and bring that conversation to the chapter. Another thing I helped with was creating a cohort for the ULI Homeless to House initiative. It was a national grant that was supposed to give funding to different city chapters to come up with a solution that the real estate community could contribute to the problem of homelessness. And I helped convene a group of people who put together a grant, and we got the funding to eventually advise two nonprofits how to build capacity for supportive housing to contribute to the homeless problem that we have in Philadelphia. And then the other program that I am also really proud of, I helped create an annual program, which is Women and Minority-Owned Business Fair. So really to bring a diverse options for partnerships for the real estate community to bring more minority and woman-owned business voices to the table and provide them opportunities so that the people actually practicing in our city come from a diverse background and look like the people that we're designing for, which I think is really important. And then on a larger scale, I was also part of ULI Health Leaders Network, Cohort 5, and that is actually a global initiative that convenes professionals and real estate professionals around the intersection of health and social equity, and then the built environment and health and human health. And so that was a cohort that brought professionals from all over the world really to share what is happening in their cities, what initiatives we can collaborate on to really push the agenda for healthier environments all over the globe. And that network, very similar to Green Building United, has really been like a knowledge sharing platform and a community. And I think it has helped me gain the confidence to really speak up when I feel like there's change that needs to happen, but also really support people who are also doing this important work and contribute to their efforts as well.
Wow. As I said, very impressive bio. No, I think this is amazing. And I think what it shows too is that you can really look at the large picture and really look at something very, very holistically, and then also connect it to very detailed decision making in, which material you choose in buildings. And it's all very, very much connected, right?
Exactly.
It's interesting you were talking about it's helped you to take leadership roles. And I imagine that is partly why you started working in a women and minority-owned firm, so that because it's probably easier to take on a leadership role in that kind of a firm. Is that too much of an assumption, or would you say that's true?
It's absolutely true from my own experience. A lot of my female mentors, I think I've seen over the years, have all these accolades, all these degrees and certifications, and still struggle so much to get and earn those leadership positions. And there's data to prove this. I think at least from 2018 statistics, only 2% of all architecture firms are female founded, which in this, we're in 2024, and I doubt that number has grown very much. So yes, I've been very fortunate to be in a firm and to have found a firm that was founded by 4 female founders. But I think they also just have a different view of like what it takes to be a leader. And they've been very intentional about providing leadership opportunities to everyone in the firm, no matter what level they're at, no matter if they're a female or male or anything in between. We all have something to contribute. And it's really important to really focus on people's strengths and help them grow, because we all have leadership opportunities or can grow into them.
This is not a new interest of yours, because I understand you co-edited a book back in 2019 on women architects and the involvement of women in the design community. Could you tell us, it was called Women Rebuild. And can you tell us a little about that book?
Yes, absolutely. So that book actually stemmed from a series of symposiums that I helped organize with five of my colleagues during the time at the University of Pennsylvania. We actually founded a Women in Architecture student group because we realized that very few of us had actual female mentors, those of us who had practiced before going back to grad school. And I thought that my mentor was such a great influence on me and my career that I really wanted to make sure that others get that opportunity. And so we started asking a lot of questions like, why is it that there's not enough women leaders in our industry? What is happening that we're losing so many right out of school because the school statistics are basically 50-50, but then there's only 30% of all architects are female. And so we organized these giant symposiums to get a lot of experts in the room around this topic and really dig deep of what's happening. And then part two of the symposium was workshop driven. So what are the skills that are needed for us to really succeed in the profession and then rise into leadership positions? And it was a really great thing because it brought together students at the university, but then professionals from all over the country and also from Philadelphia. I think sometimes felt like a little bit like a bubble. And that was the first time that I really saw professionals come to the university, really engage with the students, and then, grow into mentors as these students graduated and joined their other firms in the city here. And so the idea for the book was really to capture the information that was shared during the symposiums. And it was three-parted, one that dove into the history of why exactly, or what were the first female architects, what were their challenges, their struggles, and then dive into the statistics of the current day, like what is happening right now. There's a lot of data and research around that Equity by Design had done back in 2019, I think. And then the last part was to really highlight the female architect voices that are really thriving in the industry right now. So we had speakers, or we had contributors like Billy Chen and Studio Gang, Jeannie Gang from Studio Gang. Yeah, really amazing practicing female architects that contributed their voices and just shared how they've been able to succeed in the industry. And so as an editor, Ramone Bartuskaite and Franca Tribbiano, she was our advisor at the University of Pennsylvania. She really believed in this project, is a published author, and really coached me and Ramona through this process of editing and publishing this book. And so it wouldn't have happened without Franca.
That's just amazing, doing all the research. And what were some of the findings? I'm curious. Can you share some of the insights there?
So I think honestly, it does come down to at least part of it. What I remember, what really stuck with me is having mentors and people to look up to as you grow in your careers that help you get through like the challenging times where you might leave the profession because of one reason or another. Having people to coach you and look up to, because our industry in a way has always had these networks where, established male leaders pick a young man to mentor and coach and bring with them up into leadership. And those same networks haven't really existed for women because there were just not many women at the top. And those at the top really had to fight for their stake in the game and to get to where they were. And so having a supportive community of women, I think, is really, really crucial, and mentorship on both from men and women to help you grow and succeed and gain those leadership positions. I think being curious and like asking questions and advocating for yourself, I also found that was really important. There's not, people are really busy, especially the women in leadership who really had to like fight for their roles. So you really have to be your own advocate. If someone doesn't recognize your value, like you need to speak up for it and do your due diligence, track it, and advocate for yourself in order to gain that. Yeah, I think there's a lot more to it, but I highly recommend. I'll send you a copy of the book, Ilka, and
Definitely.
you
Yeah.
can read it.
What's great about all of this is that you're really drawing the circle, right? You're coming back to your own firm or company, and you're really providing that leadership or that opportunity to mentor and to learn for others. So I think that's great to see. One question I had going back to 15, do I understand correctly that the leader or the structure is a little bit different than in a regular architecture firm?
Yeah, I would think so. We're definitely, there's no like verticals really. We're a very flat organization. Everyone is an expert in something. Even the youngest staff members that are a few years out of college, we are all seen as like leaders in our own interest. And we're also coached in order to be able to grow those skills and then rise to leadership positions. Yeah, and I think we have like a lot of agency and flexibility in what we do. We have a lot of trust. Everyone is seen as an important contributor to the success of our firm. We all go out there and advocate and spread the word about the work that we do, and we're empowered to do so. And then, yeah, all of our principals, I think, have a lot of trust and are really great mentors, honestly, that have helped the team succeed. So, yeah, we're different in the way that we work and our processes. I think the way we approach projects is also very different. Like we co-design with our clients and our communities. We think that's very important because we recognize that we as architects are not always the people with all the answers. It's really the communities and the people who will be using and living in these spaces that are the experts. They know what they need. And our role is really to foster that and make sure that their voices are heard and acknowledged and incorporated.
Well, I couldn't agree more. So is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think the one thing I touched on about like future generations, I don't know if I mentioned this about it, but it's something that I do want to share because I think it's really important to address. And it's really inspired me right now is that I've seen how much the young generations really care about health and wellness and sustainability. And I think it's really important for us as an industry to support them and foster them and really right now build the case of why architecture and design is important and what value we contribute so that people keep investing in it. So by the time that all these innovative materials are feasible and tested and viable, that this next generation can really implement and create healthier environments. And I think every firm out there has young professionals who really care. And I think it's really, really important for us to invest in them and value what they bring to the table because they will really be leading these efforts in health and sustainability as we build a better world.
Yeah, and also really focusing not only on the architecture or the spatial relationship within architecture or buildings, but also that spec matters, right? That it's really, really important to think about what everything is made of and, you know, how that affects the environment and the health of everyone.
Keep asking those questions, like keep being curious about it and not settle just for the way things that they've always been.
Well, thank you so much. This was really, really great. Keep up this amazing work.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for giving me this opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. It was really inspiring.
Well, thank you very much for that interview. Let's go to you first, Ilka. What were your takeaways?
Well, I think it's just such a great idea to make your research accessible to others, because I feel like we all know that, especially as architects, we dive into these topics because we need to learn more about specific things or building types or products, and there's a lot of time that we spend doing that and a lot of research that we do and a lot what we learn, but then it usually just kind of stays with us or with yourself. So I think it's great that she had the idea to just write down her research and, you know, basically first publish what she learned within a firm and then went onto a platform and make it accessible to everyone. And healthy materials is certainly something that, you know, is important to all of us, not just architects.
Yeah, definitely. And what about you, Mary?
Well, I was just surprised to find out what a big knowledge gap there was between what researchers know about healthy materials and what practicing architects know. I didn't realize that it was so large and that she didn't learn about anything until her licensing exam. That was surprising to me.
And all that 7 years of architecture training.
Right.
Yeah.
good for her, as Ilka said, to try and bring what she's learned to a wider audience.
Yeah. It's always interesting when people create something that they wished existed, and then turns out that others were thinking the same and make use of that tool, and they find that there's a definite need and a market for it. What about you, Zach?
Well, what a dynamo she is, and as a leader and a change agent in so many different ways. It was a great, fascinating conversation, and I was really moved by her mission. The story of her mom, and it made me. It just drives home that how serious this topic of healthy materials is. And I had a friend and colleague at Hammer and Hand who passed away young from cancer, and the feeling was that probably that was due partly to remodeling work. Just the stuff that people are exposed to when they're tearing apart houses, and the materials that you discover and are exposed to. So it's such important work, and really inspiring the progress that she's making and the contributions she's making. So it was fantastic.
Yeah. I'm really interested in the live monitoring of indoor air quality. We often talk about people monitoring temperature, humidity, maybe CO2. Doing things like VOCs and other pollutants and just general indoor air quality can be a little bit trickier. So really interesting to see that work going on. And then connecting with public health professionals, I'm very interested in doing that. It seems like such an obvious thing with how much impact buildings have on health, but it very rarely gets connected from a funding or from a policy point of view, at least in my part of the world. And it would be great to figure out how to do that so that building requirements take into consideration the wider health impacts, and any data that can be generated, it will help to clarify some of that. Any other thoughts from you, Ilka or Mary?
Well, just kind of focusing on the mentoring aspect too. I mean, I think that's just such a great thing, again, that she recognized when she was, in the profession and doing research again about like why women are having a harder time like rising to the top, and then not only finding out that has a lot to do with role models and mentoring, but also doing something about it. So she's very, very focused on within Spec Matters to help, the young professionals coming up to be a mentor to them and giving them a voice that way. So I think that's very, very impressive as well.
There are some pretty stark statistics that she gave about the proportion of women going into architecture versus the proportion who lead architecture firms. There's definitely some systemic issues there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Mary?
Yeah, it's just, I forget what the exact expression is, but if you can't see it, you can't imagine it. And how important it is to be able to have mentors that you can look up to so that you can aspire to lead architecture firms, for instance.
Yeah.
So, that was very impressive.
Yeah, when she was sharing one of the many organizations and initiatives that she's helped start, she referred to just how powerful her experience was with her mentor, and how she wanted to share that experience or make sure that other women were also able to benefit from that kind of relationship in their profession. Was again some really, really great clarity of vision and mission that was fun to learn about.
Nice. Thank you, Mary and Ilka. And I think this will be coming up to one of our last shows before the break. So I'd also like to thank you two for helping us out with shining the light on. You've continued for another year to find amazing women out there, Ilka and Mary. I think it's really, really valuable part of the podcast, but also the stuff that we do on the accelerator as well, to shine a light on those people who are doing it. And we've heard loads and loads of amazing stories of people from all across the sector. So I really appreciate your input and finding those people and shining light on them. Zach, I mentioned it is coming up towards the end of the year, but there's a couple of things that people can get up to if they get bored of their family.
That's right. Well, the podcast will march on continuously throughout the break. So you rest assured that you'll be able to geek out at the Passive House podcast at any point with a new episode. So we'll have another one coming up next week on the 30th of December, and then of course into January. So yes, we're on a little bit of a hiatus with our live programming. So the next Passive House Accelerator Live will be on Wednesday, January 8th. You can also look forward to the Reimagine Buildings Electrification Conference. It will be on Friday, January 24th. And that we've got a great program planned, and these sort of half-day Reimagine Building conferences that we've been producing have really been a success and a lot of fun and great way to connect with like-minded folks and other professionals. So I hope that people will mark their calendars and join us for that. And if you are a member of the Reimagine Buildings Collective, you receive complimentary admission to those conferences, as well as all sorts of other benefits. The community forum has really taken off and is on fire now in the collective, which has been fun to witness, and we continue to grow really quickly. So if folks are curious about that, just go to reimaginebuildings.com and you can sign up for the collective. It's a great group of people. So, and there's also tons of we've got all of the Reimagine Buildings conference recordings available on the collective. So again, if you're bored of your family, you can go there and you and geek out to your heart's content.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for that. And as you mentioned, we will be back again next week. Thank you, okay, Mary. And we'll hear from you another great episode on Passive House Podcast next week.